Welcome to the most northerly doctor in Britain podcast, produced by Michelle Langthorne. That's me. We will dive into insightful diary extracts recorded by Dr. Anne Marshall as she documents her extraordinary time as a sole GP providing routine and emergency care to the 632 inhabitants of Unst, located in Shetland. We listen together and then the reflection and conversation starts. Episode 4, Northerly Exposure.
So today is the last day that I've got shadowing the outgoing GP. So for the last 3 days, what I've been doing is going into the practice, learning the ropes in terms of the IT systems and just how everything works and logistics, and seeing a few patients, learning how to charge up the electric car and just all those sort of process issues that I need to learn. And so tomorrow is D-Day, so going solo tomorrow. How am I feeling about that? What am I worried about? I'm worried about running into a problem that I can't solve myself, basically, because the buck stops with me. And I think yesterday I also spent a couple of hours just going through all the kit in the car, which is quite extensive. So it's all the emergency kit and emergency drugs. And it just gave me the heebie-jeebies because obviously there will be situations where that may well be needed because there is no emergency service on Unst. The emergency service is me and 2 district nurses. So that certainly increased my anxiety levels, but it was good to have a chat to the outgoing GP because he's done a lot of remote and rural GP work, and was able to just give me a couple of tips about things. For example, if someone's having a heart attack, how best to sort out the logistics for that, and who to speak to, and to ask to have what are called multi-way conversations with different clinicians in different hospitals, which I didn't know you could do. So it's been a massive learning curve, but really useful. And I'm so glad that I've done the 3 days with him, just to give me a little bit of confidence before I start. Because I think if I'd have just gone in tomorrow morning and had a half an hour handover and then told to get on with it, I'm not sure how well I would have coped with that, really. So tomorrow morning we spend an hour or so doing that. He's going to fill me in on any patients of concern and just go over how to lock up the building and sign over the controlled drugs, just basic things like that. And then I'm going to crack on and do my morning surgery. The days are actually fairly full, but they're not as long as the days that I'm used to in my normal general practice. So from what I can see, the GP tends to go in and starts work about 8ish, does a few telephone consultations, has a break for coffee with the rest of the team, and then has several face-to-face consultations and home visits, and then any other urgent consultations in the afternoon. And then alongside all the admin that you have to do as a GP. So it kind of trickles through all day long from what I can see. So I think I'm going to have to keep a close eye on that. But that's the same anywhere, really, in any practice. So it's going to be interesting to see how I cope with the workload. I mean, it doesn't seem onerous, but what I've found so far is that because I don't know the patients at all and the computer system, I don't really know my way around it. It's going to take me quite a long time to consult properly and to the level that I'm happy with, really, and the quality that I'm happy with. So I think I'm going to be running quite late if I'm going to be doing things properly, and I know that'll stress me out, but hopefully over time, as I've got used to the job and some of the patients, that might get a bit better, but we'll see how we go with that tomorrow. Very interesting day, very different to my usual experience of general practice. So this morning started quite relaxed with the outgoing GP, Mike, when the emergency doorbell went and a young 23-year-old man pitched up at the surgery saying it was an emergency and he's chopped his thumb off. So that was the first patient of the day. Obviously, being the only doctor on the island, 2.5 hours away from the nearest A&E, we are the A&E. So the team swiftly got into action. There was a district nurse and the practice nurse came and helped Mike, the GP, who is just about to finish his 2-week stint. Is very experienced in A&E, so it was his bread and butter. So it was great actually having him there just to be able to talk me through what he would do. But anyway, I managed to get an IV line in so that we could give this chap some IV antibiotics because his bone was exposed, so it was quite important that they got in there early with that. And it was interesting how he managed the actual wound, and he applied a dressing that's soaked in a drug called tranexamic acid, and then he put a dressing on it, and we gave the patient a tetanus vaccination and some pain relief, and got the ambulance to take him by road over to Gilbert Bain Hospital in Lerwick. So that was the start of the day. It took me a while to come down from that, and then had to get cracking with the sort of more routine day-to-day work of general practice, seeing patients, processing results, processing correspondence and documents from the hospital. And because I knew my IT obviously didn't work properly, so for half the day I couldn't prescribe and I couldn't write referrals, but that got sorted by sort of mid-afternoon. By the time I'd finished doing all that, it was about 6:30, so I went home, grabbed a bite to eat, and literally as I just put my plate down, my phone went, and then one of the district nurses who was on call phoned me to go and see a 95-year-old lady who'd been on the floor all night the previous night, and was quite unwell and acutely confused with a very high temperature. So I didn't feel I could deal with that over the phone, so off I went, and that's where I'm coming home from now. And it was a bit of an eye-opener really. I mean, the medicine is my bread and butter, elderly care, falls, I can do, but her dialect was so thick that the district nurse had to translate. So the things that I said, the lady was quite deaf as well, were translated by Donna, the district nurse, and vice versa. It almost sounded Scandinavian, the dialect. It was so intense. Anyway, it transpired that we decided that she needed to go into hospital. She wasn't really safe to be left at home. And the logistics of that at 8:30 at night, quite interesting. So there's a land ambulance that we called, but they're just first aid trained technicians. So then you have to make the decision whether the nurse or myself needs to go with the patient, and also whether you need to hold the ferries. So there's 2 ferries that you need to get over to the mainland of Shetland. So we organised all of that, and off she went in the ambulance, and was in full agreement with the admission. So an interesting end to a day, with some decisions that I wouldn't normally have made in my sort of standard everyday GP work, and certainly doing the A&E type stuff first thing this morning was totally out of my normal experience of general practice. So brilliant first day, absolutely shattered. Can't wait to go to bed, but I feel like I probably can't switch off because I'm just waiting for the phone to go again, but hopefully I'll get a decent night's sleep and do it all again tomorrow. Anyway, that's all for now.
Really interesting those days. So you had a couple of days before you actually did your lone GP?
Yeah, it was
stint?
3 days. So
3 days.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then started on the Thursday morning. Yeah.
But Mike was still there, was he, on the Thursday morning, luckily for you?
Yeah, so...
Not luckily for you, that sounded bad.
No, it was definitely luckily for me. Handover was about 9, and then it takes about half an hour to an hour, and then he leaves to be able to get the ferry.
And your feet didn't touch the floor that day, did they, really, in reality? What are your feelings when you listen back to that now?
Actually, very positive feelings. It's nice to hear that I just thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'd forgotten that really. It was just so different and so out of my normal scope of practice, what I did that day and the decisions that I made. It was really nice hearing that enthusiasm back again. Yeah.
I mean, now you're absorbing that a few months after, to be fair. Would you go back? I know we've discussed this before, but are you having little pangs of I want to go back to Shetland?
Yeah, yes and no. It's a difficult one really, because I'm a partner in a practice down here. It's you're very much tied to that. And I suppose I could in another 5 years do another sabbatical potentially. If I wanted to go back on a regular basis, I'd have to give that up. So it's quite a big decision really. But the medicine, I would say, if it was purely just the medicine, yeah, definitely. I really enjoyed it.
I could tell you really enjoyed it. So tell me more about the thumb. I want to know about the thumb. Just let's walk me through that day. So as you said, you got in about 9, did you say that
just
day?
before, probably about 8:30, 8:45. And we were just going through a list of patients that Mike was just handing over. And you could not make it up. It was literally 9:03, just as he was literally about to get his bag, and the doorbell went, and this young lad came in, and he was really stoic and brave, and just very matter of factly said, "I've just chopped my thumb off," in his Shetland accent, and he was. He just got on with it really, and actually he made more fuss about putting in the cannula, the Venflon, than actually dealing with his thumb. I don't think his thumb was actually hurting him that much at that point.
When you say he'd cut his thumb off, had it been severed?
And he was wearing he was working on the island. He was actually from the main island of Shetland, and he'd come up to work, and he was wearing big PPE gloves, so really thick gloves, and I think it was a sheet of metal that had just dropped onto his thumb, and had obviously gone right through the gloves, and chopped probably 2/3 of his thumb off. Yeah.
Was that the end of that part of his thumb?
It was not
so
salvageable.
Right. Okay.
No.
Okay. So you went into emergency mode.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how the team kind of all came together with it. Everyone worked together really. So the nurses just dropped everything and came in to help and knew what to do. And obviously same with Mike, so he's very used to that sort of situation. So it was quite nice for me to see that in a sort of semi-protected way with Mike still being there. But I had a bit of a role to play up at the cannula in and gave the antibiotics and so on. So it was actually, in some ways, it was quite a good start for me, so that I knew that I could deal with something like that on my own.
So it gave you confidence?
Yes, it did. Yeah.
What happened? Everything, it was a happy ever after situation-ish?
Well, we basically arranged for him to go to the main island of Shetland. We held the ferries for him. I can't quite remember how we transferred him. I think it was in the ambulance truck. And he just had surgery that day, but unfortunately it was just not salvageable, his thumb. Yeah.
Well, that was, definitely not what you were probably expecting.
Definitely not. I mean, it's hard to imagine, it's hard to know what to expect other than that anything could happen.
Yeah.
But I don't think I was really expecting sort of trauma case to be my first case, really.
It was dramatic.
Yeah.
And there is another incident towards the end of the day. You speak about the lady you had to visit because she was very, very poorly, and in the end she had to be transferred to a hospital.
Yeah.
You don't really talk about a lot in between, but I'm assuming the day was, mostly consulting, GP work, sort of paperwork?
It was a standard day in general practice. Unfortunately, the practice manager had the day off, so there were a lot of IT issues that the rest of the staff couldn't solve, which kind of made the day a bit more stressful than it needed to have been. I couldn't really prescribe, or I couldn't, send referrals and things. So I had to catch up with that at the end of the day. So it ended up being quite a long day. And I did think at the end of the day, gosh, if every day is going to be like this, I'm not sure how I'm going to survive for the next 3 weeks. But fortunately, every day wasn't like that.
But you were actually recording that at the end of your day.
Yeah.
So it's been, as you say, a very long day. Did you feel depleted of energy, or do you think you rolled a natural high into the next day?
No, I didn't feel depleted of energy at all. And actually, I slept really well there because it was dark and quiet. And I thought that I would be, sort of having that kind of twilight sleep where you're just waiting for the phone to go. And I really didn't, and slept quite well. the whole night and got up and went to work the next day.
This podcast is copyrighted by Michelle Langthorne, and all rights are reserved.